If you can play the notes written on the page, but your fingers freeze when the sheet music is gone, this video is for you. If you think you need to learn a bunch of complicated music theory before you can figure out the chords to a song, this video is for you. If you want to play by ear or you're already doing it, but you need someone else to show you the right chords for a song, guess what? This video is for you too. And it doesn't matter how long you've been playing, how old you are, or how talented or not you think you are. You can learn to figure out the chords to most songs. And because I'm your best piano playing friend, I'll show you my simple and reliable system for turning any melody into real music that you can play anywhere, anytime. Sounds good? All right, well, let's get started. So why does this even matter? Because when you understand how to figure out chords from a melody, you're no longer tied to someone else's sheet music or tutorial. You can hear a song you love, sit down at the piano, and start making sense of it all on your own. Unfortunately, most pianists can't do this. Why isn't it taught in traditional lessons? It seems like a really essential skill, right? Well, most traditional piano lessons focus on reading the notes on the page and then playing them perfectly. Now let's face it, many piano teachers, I would safely say the majority, don't have any actual training in how to teach. So they just teach the way that they've been taught, which is let's figure out the dots and squiggles on the page and turn them into sound. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, of course, but if that's the only thing you can do, you're pretty limited as a pianist. When I first started playing piano as a very young child, everything I played was by ear. I could sit down and just figure things out. But as soon as I started taking piano lessons, that skill was, well, let's just say it, that skill was systematically beaten out of me. Metaphorically speaking, no one actually hit me. Eventually, I was trained to depend on sheet music so completely that even the thought of playing any music without reading it on a page would send me into literal panic mode. I'm not exaggerating. Imagine it. After thousands of hours spent practicing to develop my piano skills, and not to mention the huge financial investment, I ended up in a place where whenever someone said to me, hey, there's a piano, can you sit down and play my favorite song? And this is absolutely a true story. I would say something like, sure, do you have the sheet music for it? And inside, I felt like a complete failure. It was awful. It hit hard knowing that I had started out naturally playing by ear and ended up being someone who really didn't have much freedom at the piano. So at some point, I decided that was enough of that, and I went out on what turned out to be a long and sometimes painful journey to reclaim my skills and combine them with usable music theory, not the dry academic kind that I had been taught in theory class, but the kind that actually lets you sit at a piano, hear a melody, and figure out what chords belong with it. And that is exactly what I'm going to show you how to do in this video. I tell you all of this about me so that you can't just write me off as someone who is naturally talented or has been doing this my whole life and hasn't had to work very hard to achieve what I'm able to do at the piano. And if I can achieve it, then so can you, my friend. What you need is, number one, the desire to learn. Number two, the courage to show up day after day, even when it feels challenging. Even when that voice in your head tells you that you're not good enough or you're never going to get this. And the third thing you need is a system that makes sense and actually works. So the first two, you have to bring those, okay? And the system that makes sense and it works, I've got it. And that's what we'll dive into next. Now, here's the first thing we need to understand, and it's super simple. A song is written in what we call a key, and that simply means that the song uses the notes of a particular scale. The scale can be a major scale or a minor scale, and I'll show you how to figure out that part a little later. In most songs, the chords come from the key of the song. That means they're all built from the notes of that one particular scale. Now, of course, not every song follows that rule. Some of them get pretty fancy with borrowed chords or they change keys, but we're not going there today because when you learn how to do this, you got to start with the basics. Don't try to run before you can walk. And what I see all the time with my students who get excited about chords is they understand the concept and then they jump straight into trying to play songs with complicated harmonies, something like Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen. Because they try to do too much with too little experience, they hit a wall. And then they feel like they're not good enough to understand this stuff. The truth is, they're not missing talent, they're just skipping steps. In the same way as if you learned that 2 + 2 = 4, you wouldn't then just jump straight into solving for a variable in a linear equation in algebra, right? Okay, I say that so you don't take what you learn here and then jump straight into complicated stuff and then come back and say your system doesn't work. All right, so keeping it to the basics for now, which will actually give you skills you can apply to a lot of songs, probably the majority of songs. We said most songs are written in one key. So your next question might be, how do I know what key a song is in? Well, the cool thing about songs is you can play them in just about any key that you want. And people do this all the time because singers have what we call different vocal ranges. Some have high voices, others have low voices, that sort of thing. Because of this, singers change the keys of songs to make them easier to sing. So for our purposes, let's say that you're learning to play a song from the recording of the original artist who performed that song. Then you would play the song in that key. Now, because I don't want to deal with the copyright nonsense that happens on YouTube all the time, I'm going to use a couple of songs that are in the public domain, but they're actually perfect for our purposes. One of them is a children's song that is based on the music of Mozart, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And the other one is called Green Sleeves, sometimes known as What Child Is This? So what we learn with these two songs, you can apply to pop and rock songs. Isn't that cool? All right. How we figure out what key a song is in is very straightforward. We can follow a rule that is true 99.9999999% of the time. And this is the rule. The last note or word of a song, of the melody, tells you what key it's in. Let me demonstrate. Here is Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Okay, by the way, sorry about the scratches on my fingers. They're probably gross. I'm a savage who has not yet learned how to cook without burning myself. Sorry. All right, so that's Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Did you notice at the very end, we ended on a C, and it sounded like the song was done. If I ended it here, would it sound like it was done? No. So at the very end of the song, we came to C. So in our version, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star is in the key of C major. Now let's take a look at Green Sleeves. Okay, there's more to it, but this sounds like it can end here, right? What note did we end on? A. We are in A minor. Now, did you notice that when I played Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, it had kind of a happy, bright, sunny sound? And when I played Green Sleeves, it had kind of a sadder, darker, cloudier sound. Okay, so that is in A minor. So generally, if the melody, and I'm not talking about the words, okay? If the melody has kind of a bright, sunny, happy sound to it, it will be in major. And if it's got like a darker, sadder sound to it, it will be in a minor scale. If you're not sure what I mean when I say major and minor scales, you can watch my video explaining scales, and I will leave the link to that video below this video. But I want you to keep watching this video because you'll still learn a lot from it. All right, so once you've found the key of a song, you can move on to the next step in our system. Let's do that now. Okay, I have taught thousands of adults to play piano, and I'm constantly learning new things myself. Languages, sports, marketing, whatever. So what I'm about to show you is what I found to be the fastest way to learn and retain information. It's what I use for myself and what I teach to my students. What you're going to need is a pencil and a piece of paper. And you're going to be doing this system with me. You're not just going to watch, because watching doesn't help you learn. You must also do something in order to learn it. So if you need to pause this video to go get some paper and a pencil, please do that now. All right. We're going to start with Twinkle, Twinkle. Now, we've already learned that in our version, this song is in the key of C major. On your paper, you're going to write the notes of the C major scale 2 times through, like this, left to right. And make sure you do it on just one line. Again, if you don't know the notes of a particular scale, you can watch my video that is linked below, or you can also do a quick Google search for that information. All right, so we've written the notes of the scale 2 times through, and this is what the notes are. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Now we're going to write some numbers over those letters to show which position a note is in that scale. For example, in C major, C is the first note of the scale. D is the second note. E is the third note. F is the fourth note, and so on. For now, we're going to stick to simple chords called triads. Triads are chords with 3 notes. And we're going to build these 3-note chords on each note of the scale. We're also going to use just one chord that has 4 notes, and I'll explain why in a few minutes. So, in C major, your scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, each of these notes can become what we call the root of a chord, the bottom note, the basis of a chord. By the way, if you know what sus2 and sus4 chords are, and you know that those are also triads, that's awesome. But we're not going to include those in this video because, again, we're keeping things simple here. All right, the way I'm going to find the chords that we're going to make is extremely easy. Let's do this together. I start with the first note of the scale and I circle it, C. Then I skip the next letter, which is D, and I circle the one right after that, E. Then I do the same again. I skip F, I go to G, G. So every other letter. This gives me a 3-note chord that we call C major. I'm going to write down the notes of the C major chord over here. And because this chord is built on C, the first note of the scale, I can also call it the 1 chord. And we use a Roman numeral 1 to indicate that that is the 1 chord. Why do we use a Roman numeral? Because Arabic numerals in music are used to represent notes, and Roman numerals are used to represent chords. Just learn it, live it, love it. So we're going to follow the same process with each note of the scale. I'll do that without too much explanation because I think you understand. So here's D, the second note of the scale. I'm going to skip a note, F, skip a note, A, D minor, write it down, D, F, A. Okay, starting on the third note of the scale, so that would be the 3 chord. E, skip a note, G, skip a note, B, skip a note. So E, G, B, E minor. F, which is the 4th note of the scale, skip a note A, skip a note C, F, A, C, that's F major. You can pause as you're writing these down and find them with me. I'm not going to slow down because, people on YouTube like to click away very quickly. So pause where you need to, okay? Now, we're on the 5th note of the scale. We're going to build the 5 chord. G, skip a note B, skip a note D. That's a G major chord, G, B, D. Starting on the 6th note of the scale, this would be the 6th chord. A, skip a note C, skip a note E, A minor, A, C, E. And the last note of the scale, the B, is the 7 chord. B, skip a note D, skip a note F. That's a B diminished chord, B, D, F. And if we go again, we're back to C. All right, so write those down. Don't worry if you're not really sure why is one major, why is one minor. I think I have videos to explain all that stuff. There are playlists on my channel. You can look for the music theory playlist. Okay, so I want you to pause the video here and make sure you've written down all of these chords and their names and the notes that are in them before you move on, because we're really going to use this information in my system. Remember earlier I said that we would have 1 chord with 4 notes in it. The reason we're including the 4-note chord, even though we're keeping things simple, is because this particular 4-note chord is really important in establishing the key of the song. This chord is called the dominant 7th chord. It's built on the 5th note of the scale. In C major, C, D, E, F, G, we already wrote down the chord G, B, D, the 5 chord. In order to make it a dominant 7th, dominant is like what we call the 5th note of the scale. That's why it's called dominant 7th. You can call it 5/7. Okay, so because it's built on the 5th note of the chord. We already did the note, skip a note, skip a note. We're going to do that one more time. Skip E, go to F. We've got our 4-note chord, the 5/7, more accurately called the dominant 7th, same exact thing, okay? So, the dominant 7th chord, the reason that this is a very important chord in Western music, and by Western I mean like European-based music, is because this chord has a very strong pull back to the 1 chord. So you may have heard like orchestras or, symphonies like that ending kind of like this. Basically what that is a 5/7, dominant 7 chord going to a 1. So the 1 chord feels like home. It feels like an ending. The 5/7 chord wants to go to the 1 chord. It's basically The relationship between the 5/7 and the 1 chord is one of the foundations of Western harmony. And remember that the note the melody ends on is usually the home note or the first note of the scale. So we definitely want to go back to the 1 chord. I am intentionally leaving out a lot of the technical theory language here because it's not all that important to know. What I think is important is using the most essential information to actually achieve what you want to achieve. So if you want to leave a comment below scolding me for not dumping a bunch of theory language here, please feel free to do so. I'm leaving it out on purpose, not because I don't know it. Now, we're going to repeat that process of finding all the chords in a scale with the A minor scale for our song Greensleeves. Let's keep in mind that this video is not a scale tutorial, so I won't be going into a whole lot of detail about scales. You can watch my scales video, again, linked below. The important thing to remember about minor scales is that each minor scale has 3 versions. For now, I'll give you each version, and I want you to write it out with me on your piece of paper. Here we go. The first form of the A minor scale, I'm not going to even tell you what it's called. Don't worry about it. Just call it 1 for now. All right. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. Notice we used all the white keys just like we did for the C major scale. So the A minor scale is very similar to the C major scale, but it has a different home. It has a different 1, okay, which changes the sound of the music. The second form of the A minor scale is very similar to the first one, except the 7th note. So here's what it looks like. A, B, C, D, E, F, G sharp, A, B, C, D, E, F, G sharp, A. The third form of the A minor scale, you can pause at any point, okay? Don't get overwhelmed here. The third form has 1 more alteration, and that's the 6th note of the scale. Looks like this. A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. So essentially, we've got the first 5 notes are unchanging. We can use either F or G or F sharp or G sharp. This gives us a lot of notes to pull from where we can have rich harmonies, okay? So in the A minor scale, we can make our chords using these notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay? So let's do that. I'm going to do it very quickly. It's the note, skip a note, note. I'll start with the first one. The 1 chord is A, C, E, A minor, 2 chord. B, D, F, B diminished. 3 chord, C, E, G, C major, 4 chord. D, F, A, D minor, 5 chord. E minor, E, G, B. You can pause anytime, okay? Don't freak out. 6 chord. F major, F, A, C, and 7 chord. G major, G, B, D. All right. Now, looking at the second form of the scale, the one that has the G sharp instead of the G. All right, well, we see that the first chord hasn't changed. The second chord hasn't changed. The third chord, ooh, that's got a G sharp. It's kind of spicy. C, E, G sharp. C augmented chord. All right, well, then the 4th chord is the same as our first version. The 5 chord is an E major chord, E, G sharp, B. The 6th chord hasn't changed. And then the 7 chord is, woo, G sharp, B, D, G sharp diminished. So the minor scales give us more stuff to use. I know I'm going fast. Please pause and digest, okay? Just look at it kind of like a picture. Don't try to understand the underlying theory. You've got the picture of the letters written out, and we're just circling them. And I'm telling you what they are called, and you see them written on the screen. So just take it in for now. You don't have to understand everything. Think about when children are learning stuff, right? They just take it in, and then they start understanding reasons and variations of things later on. They don't say, well, hold on, none of this makes sense. They grab whatever they can. So whenever you're learning, you want to come at it kind of like with a child's mind, right? Don't say like, this is way too complicated. Just look at it like a picture for now. Okay. Now, looking at the third form of the scale, we know we're going to have these two black keys. All right, so the first chord is unchanged, A minor, which makes sense because that's the home, right? It's the one chord. We don't want that one to change. The two chord, B minor, B, D, F sharp. The three chord, C augmented, C, E, G sharp. The, fourth chord, D, F sharp, A, D major. The five chord, E major, E, G sharp, B. The sixth chord, F sharp diminished, F sharp, A, C. And the seventh chord, G sharp diminished, G sharp, B, D. All right. I do have a book that helps you understand all of these triads plus the sus chords. You can get it at the link below. You don't have to. Remember that very important dominant seventh chord? All right, we also need to find it in A minor. So in A minor, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the dominant seventh chord, we're going to use the G sharp. I'm not going to explain it in this video. I do have other videos where I explain that. So music theory can get pretty deep. I'm giving you just what you need for now, okay? So we're going to take that E major chord, and we're going to skip the C and go to D. There's our dominant seventh chord. Okay, so E, G sharp, B, D is the dominant seventh chord in A minor, or the 5-7 chord in A minor. Okay, so now we have everything in one place, all the notes of the scales, all the chords that are made from the notes of those scales. Now we can move on to adding chords to our melodies. We'll do that next. We mapped out all of the chords earlier in the keys of C major and A minor so that we can see which ones go with which melody notes. But how do we figure that out? Well, it's important to know that every melody note doesn't have to get a different chord. If we changed chords with each and every note of the melody, it would sound really bizarre. Think of your favorite song, or go listen to it now, and you'll hear that there's a certain sound of a chord and the melody moves around on top of it. You know, the singer sings some words, and then the chord changes at a certain point. I'll talk more about that later. For now, let's keep in mind a general rule. Your melody note is almost always one of the notes of a given chord. For example, if your melody is in the key of C and the melody note is E, you could fit it over any of the chords that have an E in it. So we'll just take a look at the chords we wrote out earlier and find which ones have an E. Well, C, E, G. C major has an E. E minor has an E. E, G, B. And A minor has an E. A, C, E. So I'll show you in a minute how to experiment to find which chords sound right in a particular spot of a melody. But before I do, I want you to know another general rule. Don't worry, it's simple. Here it is. Melodies often start on the 1 the 4 or the 5 chord. And they almost always end on the 1 chord. So we're already going in armed with a lot of tools we can use. The chords don't change with every melody note. The melody note is probably one of the notes in a chord, and the melody usually starts on the 1, the 4, or the 5 chord, and it usually ends on the 1 chord. Taking a lot of the guesswork out here. All right, let's put this into action with Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Let's look at the chord diagram we made earlier. We know we're starting Twinkle, Twinkle on a C. Which chords in C major include the note C? Well, the 1 chord, C major, has a C. Okay, I'll put the melody up here. The 4 chord has a C, F-A-C. And the 6 chord has a C. Okay, so if I play the melody with the A minor chord, does that sound right to you? It sounds kind of, that's okay, but when I move on, it doesn't sound so good. It sounds a little too unstable to start this song. All right, what about the 4 chord? Well, maybe let's hear the 1 chord. Ah, that sounds better, doesn't it? So we're starting with the C, and we know that the 1 chord is a really great place to start. Twinkle. Okay, well, there's a G. I can play the same chord because it's got a G in it, but just for fun, let's hear what other chords sound like with it. Okay, so the G, I have the same note in E minor, so let's sound. That actually sounds good to me. I like that. So there's a possibility. I like that. Okay, let's hear, what about G major? That sounds okay too. So you see that you also get some freedom. When you understand chords, you're not stuck to one way of doing it. So far, I've got a few ways I can play just Twinkle, Twinkle. I can do it like this. Staying on the G, on the C chord, I can go like this. I like that. I think that sounds way cooler. So I might choose that one. Or I can go like this. It's okay. I prefer the E minor, actually. It sounds maybe more modern than Mozart's version. That would be Mozart's. Then this is going to be mine. I like that. Okay, what about the A? Well, we've got a few notes, a few chords that we can use. We can do D minor. Let's hear it. I'm going to just do this. I'm not crazy about that one. It's a matter of taste. Okay, what other chord has an A in it? Well, the F chord does. All right, let's hear what that sounds like. I like that. I like the way it goes from the E minor to the F. I like that. What other chord possibility do we have? We can do the A minor, so let's try that. It's okay. I'm not crazy about it. I really like so far the C chord, the E minor, and the F major. Okay? Notice I'm not changing the chord every time I play the note. Well, it's the same note. Okay? And then let's just finish up this phrase of the song. We're on a G. Okay, so we can do either C chord, we can do E minor chord, or we can do G chord. I'm going to go with the C chord for now. So let's hear what it sounds like. I like that very much. But just for fun, I'm going to try my other options. I, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 117, 118, 119, 120, Maybe I might choose that one too. I like it. And then my last option. It's okay. I think I prefer above all the C, going back to the C. Okay, actually I'll keep going. Now, I have an F. Well, there are a few chords I can use. I can use the D minor. I can use the F major. Or I can use my dominant 7th chord. Ah, see, it's part of the chord. Okay, so I like that. Let me do it up here so we can hear it. I like going to the 5-7, the dominant 7. Let's hear it. I like that. Okay, so the dominant 7. It doesn't always want to go to the 1. In fact, sometimes we like to surprise the listener. So on the E, I can use either the 1 chord or the E minor or A minor. I think I like the A minor. So if I go, I like that. Okay, and then I've got a D. I can use the D minor, or I can use G major or the dominant 7. Okay, I'm gonna go with the D minor, and then I'm gonna change on this next chord, going back to the dominant 7 and then the 1. You hear how that sounds so complete? So I'll play that whole thing we've got so far. I know I'm going kind of fast, but listen, you hold the control with your clicker, okay, your mouse or your finger. So this is what I've decided on for my version for now. I like the way that sounds. It sounds way cooler than what, I don't know, can I say that? Can I say it sounds cooler than what Mozart wrote? The way it's usually played is very... It's very straightforward, and there's nothing wrong with it. But I liked adding some of those minor chords in there. So you see that there's not just one way to do it. You can always change the chords. And I actually do. When I'm performing like pop songs and stuff, I change chords all the time. It sounds cool. All right, so let's try this a little bit with Green Sleeves, the A minor song that we have. The first note, A, I'm just going to do it without the chord. Let's not discuss why right now. Our next note is C. Okay, so I can do an A minor chord, which would make sense because it's the 1 chord. Okay, or let's see what else. I can do a C major chord. I'm not sure about that. I can do a C augmented. That doesn't sound good for sure. All right, what else? What other chord has a C in it? I can use an F chord, F-A-C. That doesn't sound good. I like the 1 chord here. It gives me the proper mood of the song. Notice I'm not going to harmonize each and every note here. So if I were actually like performing this, I would do something like that. I would stay on the A chord. Okay? And then bum bum bum. To me, it's outlining. It's already telling me to play a G chord. So you see the melody is outlining the same chord, the G chord. So I don't have to think too hard about that. What happens when you start doing this more and more is eventually you develop your ear and your knowledge of the chords, and it happens really, really fast where you go, that I'm not going to change. You You could, if you were doing a particular, say there's no right or wrong answer here, whatever you like. I like keeping the A minor, going to the G major, because here's, now look what's happening in the next part of the melody. It's basically telling me to play an F major chord. I'm not doing all the experimenting because you understand you can do them yourself. You've got the chords in front of you. But I am giving you kind of like, I don't like this word, the shortcut. Don't tell anyone I said that. It's not really a shortcut. It's really, like what I said, is developing your ability to quickly hone in on what's happening in the music. So I see my melody is giving me a G major chord, then an F major, and then an E major. You see that melody? Okay, so how do I know this? Well, I spent a lot of time doing it. But if you go through the process, see, here's the thing. If you go through the process of that I showed you, of like playing different chords and asking yourself, do I like the way that sounds? What is happening? When do I actually want to change the chord? The process of experimenting, asking yourself, and then evaluating what you're hearing and making decisions, that's where the learning happens. Do not skip that part. I keep seeing ads that tell me you can go from beginner to pro pianist in 5 days. Please stop giving those people money. But more importantly, they give you the idea that this stuff just happens. No, they are absolutely lying to you, okay? They want your money, point blank. So I say that so you don't give up like the first day you're trying this. And this is so hard. Listen, my friend, if you want it bad enough, you're going to stick with it. If you don't, then you're going to find reasons why you can't do it. And that's fine, all right? But just be fair to the process. Be fair to yourself and know that it's in the doing and the making the mistakes and realizing what sounds good with what. That's where you learn how to do this. Make sense? Make sure you start out by practicing with very simple melodies, like children's songs, folk songs, some Christmas songs. Very quickly, if you stay with it, you'll start to see how the chords and the melodies kind of pair up, and you'll start to make your own choices. Then when you start attempting more complex music, your brain will already know what to look for. Your ears will know what to listen for. So in this video, we didn't really dive into how to play those chords and melodies together, like what left-hand patterns can you use, how to play the chords so they sound cool, and so on. If you want to go to the next step and learn my simple 3-finger left-hand pattern that you can use with any song, then click on this video here. Keep practicing, have fun, and I'll see you soon. Bye.